we want to share with you some of the key objectives of this CARIGEO initiative. Of course, strengthening geospatial information management, governance and policies, creation of data sets and procurement of development of tools, enhancing collaboration and partnerships, and capacity development, communication, engagement, and the importance of institutionalizing and incorporating geospatial information management in national development strategies. And all of the above are crucial in the light of the earthquake of Haiti last Saturday. Our solidarity is with our colleagues and friends. And today we want to, in this side event, share knowledge and create awareness among the region's senior decision makers on the value of leveraging geospatial and statistical data. We want to show the advances and the uses of the Caribbean Geoportal in preparing and taking measures to take action for disaster management and response. And finally, report on the following topics to be developed by this initiative around the use of geographic standards supporting national development. So today we have an agenda a bit less than 2 hours with 5 presentations with 5 of the key CARIGEO initiative members. And once these presentations are finished, we will have an open discussion to share with, listen to your thoughts on this initiative. So once again, I want to thank the organizers, thank everyone that is here for the opportunity to share CARIGEO initiative and to showcase the value of geospatial information in the Caribbean. Thank you and welcome everyone.
Thank you very much for your words, Paloma. Now I give the floor to Dr. Beshem Ramlal. He's a senior lecturer and geospatial specialist with over 25 years of professional experience. His research is focused on all aspects of the geospatial knowledge infrastructure design and development. He works at the Department of Geomatics Engineering and Land Management in the University of West Indies San Agustin campus in Trinidad and Tobago. The floor is yours, Dr. Ramlal.
Thank you, Gabriela. Let me share my screen. Yes. So good morning to everyone again, and thanks for attending our side event. I will speak on the background and the program plans for the CARIGEO initiative. So a little bit about CARIGEO in terms of its purpose. What we are attempting to do is to improve spatial data infrastructure at the national and regional levels in the Caribbean. In order to do that, we will build on recent and ongoing developments. So for example, we know that the pandemic, as unfortunate as it is, has helped us to improve e-government and the resources with respect to e-government and e-education and so on across the region. And therefore, we can use that as an opportunity to leverage such technologies, as well as to leverage indigenous skills and resources that we have available in the region, and to embrace any kind of external resources and technical expertise that we can bring to bear to help support the region. So for example, ESRI is providing some support, and we can leverage that to help to improve SDI in the region. So the CARIGEO initiative is being implemented by the UNGGIM Americas Regional Committee, and this is being done with several partners, including the UNECLAC, UNGGIM, ESRI, the University of the West Indies, the National Autonomous University of Mexico, the Association of Caribbean States, CARICOM, Kellogg Foundation, Geotech Vision, EURESA Caribbean, Spatial Innovation, IDB, and the number of partners will be growing as we reach out to more and more stakeholders who are willing to contribute to the development in the region. In terms of participation, we have engaged with national mapping agencies and national statistical offices across the region. And from the map, it is very obvious that we are taking on all the countries and territories in the wider Caribbean area, including Suriname, Belize, the Bahamas, Cuba, Dominican Republic, and so on, Aruba as well. So that this is broad-based, it is the entire Caribbean region that we are hoping to impact with the efforts of the CARIGEO initiative. So what do we want to see? What do we want to achieve? Hopefully, as we move along, we will develop a community of data producers and users and be able to sustain this particular community going forward. It is not something that is going to be temporary, but is going to be something that we hope that would be sustained. We also hope to develop and improve capacities in GIS and data management across the region, nationally, of course, and regionally. We want to be able to increase the funding that is available for creating and updating the fundamental geospatial data sets. And of course, when such data sets are developed, we want to make sure that they are made available more openly at the national and regional levels as well. We want to ensure, or more than anything else, the value of geospatial information, of course, is in use. And therefore, we want to be able to leverage that geospatial data and information for development decisions and policy formulation. In order to support all of this, we expect to, again, work with participants across the region to develop and enact national legislation to be able to regulate the use and promote the use of geoinformation. Where legislation is absent, and even with legislation, sometimes we need to make sure that there are agreements for collaboration and cooperation on the use of geoinformation, again, nationally and regionally. So at the end of this process, or as this process continues, we hope that we can achieve this particular future. Some of the initiatives we are building on would be the Caribbean Project, for example. This was a project that was initiated through the UNGGIM Americas and funded by the government of Mexico with some support from the government of Chile. We had as collaborators the Association of Caribbean States, the University of the West Indies, CDIMA, EURISA Caribbean. The funding for this project amounted to just about US $4.5 million. We started in 2014 and it ended in 2018. And as you see here, several countries participated. Some of the successes of this initiative was the deployment of GPS core station across the region. And some of these core stations are still operating. Some of them were destroyed, for example, in Dominica with the hurricane there, we had a challenge. But in addition to that, we had a lot of training courses that were delivered. And here, a training course in the use of GPS station, GPS device receivers were done. This was done actually in St. Augustine, Trinidad. Another achievement was actually an award that was given to Antigua and Barbuda. And this was, this picture shows one of our representatives in the Caribbean being presented with an award at the World Geospatial Forum 2 in China. Here, participants assembled to take a picture at the UN headquarters after participating in a UNGGIM Americas meeting. In this picture, participants are being trained at the UN headquarters in metadata standards. Caribbean participants at the UNGGIM global committee meetings, and CARIGEO, in the final picture, CARIGEO members participating at a conference in Trinidad and Tobago a couple of years ago. So these are some of the things that we've been involved in. In terms of progress, the CARIGEO steering committee has been established, and several of us are serving on that committee, and we are presenting some of our work today. But we are moving ahead as well to establish a high-level executive board to support the work of the CARIGEO initiative. We have developed terms of reference as well as a program proposal, and I'll speak to that in a little bit. We have continued to engage partners and donors, and we have several partners who would have contributed to one of our initiatives that I'll mention, and Linda will speak more to in a minute. And we have worked on formulating and executing projects and activities. The side event is one such activity. The terms of reference is based on the following guiding principles. And the guiding principles were based on some of the work that was done at the international level. We want to make sure that there's collaboration and coordination. We adhere to standards. We want to make sure that participants have ownership and accountability when it comes to whatever is developed for all the partners and participants across the region. It's built on transparency, respect, and confidence. We want to make sure that the standards of service that is provided will be very high. And of course, we are adhering to laws and regulations across the region. Our terms of reference is aligned to international frameworks, such as the Integrated Geospatial Information Framework, the Global Statistical Geospatial Framework, the Global Geodetic Reference Frame, and the Strategic Framework for Disasters, so that all the things that we do would be aligned to these international standards. In terms of the program proposal, this is let's say, the big picture framework for the scope of works that we intend to engage in. The first would be the assessment of the current situation in the Caribbean. We need to know what exists, what are the issues, what are the challenges before we go on to look at other things. We will also work with country participants to look at governance and policy issues, to develop collaborations and partnerships amongst agencies within countries and across countries, develop data sets and appropriate tools to ensure that these data sets meet the requirements of each of the countries and regional requirements as well, to develop capacities in each of the countries and each of the agencies that are participating and that are very important in developing the fundamental data sets. And more than anything else, to work with partners, work with participants from all the countries to ensure that we communicate what they have done, what is made available, because if no one knows what's happening, then they don't know that there's data, there are other things that they can leverage. And so communications would be very important. Just my final slide is to say that the Caribbean Geoportal, is one of our key contribution at this stage, and we have done quite a bit of work on the portal and would have assembled quite a bit of data. I will leave this for Linda to speak to a little bit more, but we have had quite a bit of support from the ESRI towards supporting the region, so that we are very proud of this particular achievement, and we hope that more and more people in the region and in fact other regions would be able to access this and leverage the data out of this. So with this, I hand over back to Gabriela, who will introduce the next speaker, Linda Peters. So thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Doctor. I think you gave us a clear overview of the CARIGEO initiative. Our next speaker is Ms. Linda Peters. She has over 25 years of experience working in the geospatial industry, working for Esri for more than 70 years. Linda has consulted with companies across industries helping them achieve greater efficiencies by leveraging GIS and spatial analysis. Linda today works with national statistical offices across the globe, helping them understand how to apply geographic methods and GIS, census and statistical activities. Linda is a member of the UNGGIM expert group on the integration of statistical and geospatial information, as well as big data working groups. Ms. Peter is currently a board member of the Applied Geography Specialty Group and past president of the Business Geography Specialty Group. In 2014, Linda authored Esri's MOOC, The Location Advantage, designed to teach students how to apply geospatial technology to business. Most recently, Ms. Peters co-authored the book GIS and the 2020 Census, Modernizing Official Statistics. Please, the floor is yours, Linda.
Thank you, Gabriela. Thank you so much. And good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I am really honored to be here today and to be able to present to you some of the work that we've been doing over the past year. So I'll talk a little bit about our programs and initiatives and the work in action, starting with a series of webinars. As Hashem said, communication is so important, as well as capacity building. So we wanted a very strong focus within the community to reach out and engage. So these webinars, while informative, are also always very interactive. We held the first webinar early this year with the Academic Network, focused on ethics and the use of geospatial information. We have followed that with 2 webinars focused on the Caribbean Geoportal. The first one for users to help people understand how to use the platform and what sort of data is contained within it. And the second one most recently on disasters. And both of those are recorded and available. If you've missed them, please, I encourage you to go back and have a look. We have some additional webinars scheduled. The UNGGIM webinar is scheduled for August 31st. For additional information on that, please reach out. And we are scheduling another Geoportal webinar on September 21st, this one focusing on best practices around data sharing. And we'll continue these webinars. We're considering another webinar later this fall on the integration of statistics and geospatial information. So as you can see, a lot going on. We're getting very good attendance as well. For example, the Caribbean Geoportal webinar, we had 280 people registered, with about half of those attending in person. So really great attendance rate and participation rate from the community. We've also been doing a lot to identify new partners, as Basham mentioned. We've spent quite a bit of time with both the NASA team and the NOAA team. NASA has been curating a lot of their data, and we worked with them to stand up a new microsite for NASA within the Caribbean Geoportal. So a ton of really good information, earthquake information, hurricane, landslide, flooding. Same with NOAA, and we're working on a new microsite for NOAA now. That will go live in September with our next webinar. We've also been developing our partnerships with SDIMA and with ACS around disasters data. And we have put some new apps for disaster response into the portal. So I encourage you to go out and take a look at those. There's some really nice applications that you could use at the local level, things like locating shelters or indicating road closures, right? These are things everyone can use in times of disaster. Additionally, in the partner side, we are very strongly focused on the maritime area now. We started on the land, you know, all those things we know we need, but maritime is a big part of the Caribbean. So working with IHO and the MOC. The MOC is the Mesoamerican Caribbean Hydrographic Commission, who have some really great data across the region, as well as some other partners like TCARTA or Caribbean Marine Atlas. So we're curating all of that data together now, and we will have a new maritime microsite available shortly on the platform. We're also focused on community. Community pages will be going live soon, and we've created a new section for trending items. Again, what we want to do is have the community see what other people are using, what's important to them. So, you know, a feedback loop from the community to the community, if you will. In this new community page, we also have now a survey on disasters, and we will make that link available. I'll put that here in the chat when I'm done talking. That survey is open for anyone to fill out and submit. It helps us understand what is important to you. Last thing on the Caribbean Geoportal with regards to community, as of yesterday, I checked in, we now have over 2,100 users within the Caribbean Geoportal. So I think that's a really great milestone for us. We're picking up about 50 new users a week, and after the last webinar on disasters, we had more than 250 new users come in and start using the platform. So the community is definitely aware and embracing the use of the technology. One thing really important, and I'm glad to see Bobby Piard is here in the audience today, we have a new page for Haiti ready to go live today. I will also share this link into the chat. So we worked very hard over the weekend to centralize resources for the country, pulling together earthquake information, hurricane floods, soils, many other things into this new page. So we are here and ready to support as much as we can. And again, I'll share this link out. Some other key partnerships that are interesting beginning to develop due to the visibility of the Geoportal are relationships such as with University of Rhode Island, who reached out to us having seen the Caribbean Geoportal. They have had a program in place for a few years now to develop a critical infrastructure database. They've developed a model and a method to do that. And so we have now been working in conjunction with them to get their data ready to publish into the portal. This is things such as ports and energy, utility plants and things like that across the region. So we're very excited to bring them on as a new partner. And you'll see that data coming on again in the September timeframe. And then another really special relationship, which I'm very excited about, with Sandra Turner. She's a National Geographic certified instructor. She is from the region there and focuses specifically on K through 12 education, which I think is a very important sector that oftentimes gets overlooked. So we're excited to have her begin to participate with us, to collaborate with UE and UNAM and some of the other great academic institutions in the region to further learning with some younger minds. Other activities we've done, we hosted a session during the Statistical Conference of the Americas, and of course, participating in the GGIM Americas session this fall. We have also looked at doing some project work in the region. We originally submitted a proposal on the Sargassum project to the Blue Economy Cluster back in the spring. That did not go forward, but we have since then applied to the Blue Economy Innovation Challenge, and the project is shortlisted to move forward. So we're really hopeful that we will move along in the selection process and begin to do some critical work around sargassum. Now, there's a lot still going on. As Besham mentioned, we are looking always to obtain funding to support project execution and implementation at the member state level. We're continuing to seek the support of the member states to commit to participate with us and benefit from this project, and to implement the strategies to establish these communication channels and ways to keep everyone engaged and informed. We are trying very hard to develop mechanisms and capacity for sustainability, and of course, always looking at monitoring and evaluation of the project as we continue on. So with that, I will say thank you, and a quick screenshot from the community in our last webinar, who were very excited, and I hope many of you are here again today, and we look forward to speaking to you at the end of the session. Thank you, and I'll hand it back to Gabriela.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Linda. I think you did a very good recap of the activities that we have carried out so far as part of the CARIGEO initiative. Our next speakers are Ms. Simone Lloyd. She's a certified geospatial professional from Jamaica who serves as the Senior GIS Manager and Trainer within the National Spatial Data Management branch of Jamaica's Ministry of Housing, Urban Renewal, Environment and Climate Change. She serves as Jamaica's focal point and head of delegation to the UNGGIM Committee of Experts with Jamaica co-chairmanship, support and task groups, the leadership of the UNGGIM Working Group on Geospatial Information and Services for Disasters. She is the Jamaica's focal point in UNGGIM Americas, serving on the CARIGEO Steering Committee, and provides UNGGIM America's representation on the high-level group on integrated geospatial information management. And Ms. Artie Dubry, she's the Sustainable Development and Disaster Unit Coordinator at the ECLAC Subregional Headquarters for the Caribbean. Artie joined ECLAC in November 2017, and with the responsibility in supporting the Caribbean towards meeting and maintaining their sustainable development priorities. Her UN career began in 2003 with the United Nations Environment Program, and with assignments to the regional offices for Latin America and the Caribbean and Asia Pacific. Artists from Trinidad and Tobago. Welcome, Simone and Archie, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Gabriela. Hello, everyone. So my duty is to facilitate an overview of geospatial applications, and in particular, I'll be touching more on the Caribbean Geoportal, of which Linda would have started in terms of mentioning an overview of that. So I will get into the context of the Caribbean region with respect to our region being highly vulnerable to various hazards, which then makes us being impacted by various disasters, of which we would know based on what happened over the weekend and continues to happen. So what is our context? We'll be looking at CRIF briefly, and then I'll hand over to Artie to dive more into CRIF. We'll be looking at the Sdi framework and the strategic framework on disasters and how it is that both are aligned, and how within that context, how it is that the Caribbean Geoportal supports the execution of the Sdi framework and the strategic framework on disasters through the various functionalities it provides, the data it provides, of which Linda would have spoken to some of those in terms of various partners that are helping to support the maintenance of data on the platform, and of course its utilization, of which we are really encouraging. So the Caribbean region is highly vulnerable given the fact that we sit where we sit geographically within the tropics, different from our varied geographical landscape in terms of limestone and volcanic and other types of or geological setting in terms of being on the Caribbean plate. So all of that lends itself to us being highly vulnerable to various hazards. And so with that, the fact that we suffer significantly whenever there are particular hazards that result in disasters. So the impact is significant from a damage point of view with respect to the percentage of our GDP. The frequency of these events will vary, and in particular, during the Atlantic hurricane season, there is an increase where that is concerned. And within the current context, we're seeing increased seismic activity different from hydrometeorological events. And so our affected population is very significant. Also, within the context that the region is made up of small island developing states, and with these small and developing states, we are highly vulnerable to these varied impacts. So if you look within the region, we have primarily high to very high. So some areas are moderate with respect to the level of natural disaster risks, whereas other areas are high to very high. And so with that, we are impacted by hurricanes, tropical storms, tropical depressions, and thaws. And in particular, within the Atlantic hurricane season, there are earthquakes, volcanoes, landslides, floods. There are fires, forest fires, wildfires, and also drought, different from other disasters with respect to the health sector. Now, given the news, and we would all be aware that over the weekend, the region would have experienced a 7.2 earthquake, which would have primarily affected Haiti and also would have affected other countries such as the Domre, Puerto Rico, Jamaica, and other countries. And so with that, seismic activity is real. We're experiencing it with some aftershocks still occurring. And apart from that, the fact that Tropical Storm Fred recently passed through, and now we have a tropical depression now upgraded again to a Tropical Storm Grace that is impacting the region and will be impacting Hispaniola Apart from that, there was a trough that was also impacting areas in addition to Tropical Storm Fred. And so we're seeing that there are a multiplicity of disasters occurring within the region, apart from the fact also that there's COVID-19, which is still real and is also impacting all countries within the region, but to varying extents. And so various platforms are key in terms of assisting us to help in terms of understanding what is happening, because as I like what the Pacific Disaster Center's disaster aware platform speaks, that disasters happen fast, and making better decisions fast is really key. And so with that, we're going to drill down into our Caribbean Geoportal, which helps us within the region to specifically focus on that. Now, given the significant impact, frequency of these various events, the impact that they have with respect to our economies, with respect to our livelihoods, or infrastructure, also our population, there has been the need for a carbon catastrophe risk insurance facility. And with that, it's having a segregated portfolio company that looks at the dispensing of financial support whenever it's a case whereby particular policies are triggered for tropical storms, earthquakes, excess rainfall in particular, given our focus currently with respect to disasters. And so with that, these particular 3 policies speak directly to natural events within the region, of which on many occasions, given those events, there is significant impact. Now, if we can see here, CRIF's payout up to yesterday, with respect to immediate post-event activities has been 62%, a whopping 62%. So immediate post-event activities after any major event occurs, of which predominantly those are natural events, results in 62% of payouts going out. All right, and so that is very significant and speaks to the magnitude of disasters within the region and the impact that they have, which then result in the need for immediate response after the events occur. Now, the Sendai framework, which should be achieved by 2030, speaks to providing member states with concrete actions that really promote the whole protection with respect to our development gains, where the whole risk of disasters are concerned. And so with that, this framework, which should be achieved globally, needed the backing of geospatial information and services to help drive the whole examination of these various disasters, where they occur, how do they occur, how to develop mitigation plans and strategies, how to deal with restoration efforts, all of that. And so with that came the UNGGIM's development of a working group on geospatial information and services for disasters. Because at the end of the day, the focus is really on reducing losses of life and livelihoods, health, with respect to disasters. So how it is that we can lessen the impact economically, physically, socially, culturally, environmentally, where various disasters are concerned. And so the working group on geospatial information and services for disasters focuses on how it is that geospatial information and services, also relevant statistical information, can really help member states to better understand, formulate policies, but also manage risks and the impacts of these various disasters. And this should happen across all sectors. It should also happen before, during, and after these events occur. And so with that, the strategic framework focuses on these 5 priority areas. So how it is that member states can examine beefing up or strengthening their governance and policies, their awareness raising and capacity building initiatives, their data management initiatives, common infrastructure and services, but also mobilizing all the various resources which are integral in ensuring that we're able to really reduce the impact of disasters. So disaster risk reduction. So Linda and Beshem, Dr. Ramlal would have spoken to the fact that Esri has been highly committed to the Caribbean region and how it is that the provision of geospatial resources can really help to boost our response and our activities within the region to ensure that we are more geo-enabled. And so with that came Mr. Dangerman, the president and founder of Esri, supporting the region with regards to the provision of this Caribbean Geoportal. through a partnership. And so Linda would have spoken to the portal. And with that, this open mapping community of which we're so promoting, which provides various data. And Linda would have gone through all of the various partners that have been engaged, that are being engaged with respect to ensuring that all the data that is there is really relevant and can be utilized by the various workers, the various member states, all the persons working in the region to really improve how we respond to disasters and how we also examine other areas in terms of other issues that affect the region. So the platform provides data, analytical tools, it facilitates software training, also publishing of data that we create in our region, how it is that we can facilitate publishing of that, field operations that we conduct, how it is that tools are there to support field operations and uploading of such data sets, but also configuring web applications. So there are various applications that are there, of which Linda has spoken to a few of those. Yes, so geospatial tools which vary, also being able to create web maps, a wide array of spatial analytics in terms of tools that are available, different from being able to do work, yes, field work within the region with respect to capturing geospatial information. So on the Caribbean Geoportal, given the fact that we're in the Atlantic hurricane season, we can see there that given the live feed that is coming in for the National Hurricane Center and the Central Pacific Hurricane Center, we're able to see what's happening with respect to the various storms that are currently traversing the region, the one that has passed and the other one that is presently traversing. And so with that, being able to monitor and see what is happening. So this is one major benefit of the portal, the fact that live feed is happening from all the major international institutions that are actively going through the process of capturing and monitoring these various events. And so with that, a one go-to area where we can actually see what is happening where that is concerned. So NASA is one of the primary entities of which Esri has engaged and has partnered with respect to maintaining the Caribbean Geoportal. And I'm so happy to see that Sean McGuinness, who is in charge of dealing with the portal, is online from Esri. So we can see here that we can do a check in terms of recent earthquakes in the region. And with that, looking at Esri live feed with respect to what's happening. So what is happening in terms of earthquake distribution globally, different from drilling down to the Caribbean region, and what is happening specifically where Haiti is concerned, because a recent earthquake has occurred, tremors are still occurring, so what is happening there? Artie will get more into what's happening where Haiti is concerned and the response effort where that is concerned and what is happening in terms of the impact where that particular event is concerned. So this is just a snapshot of the various disaster-specific resources that are on the portal. This is just a snapshot, so there's much more there to be explored, which is why we're encouraging users to really access the portal, go on, see what is available, and with that, we're encouraging your utilization, being aware first, and then utilizing what is available. So Hurricane and Cyclone app is there. Linda would have spoken to the fact that based on what has happened with Haiti, that something is being launched today to facilitate us getting data where that is concerned. Tropical Cyclone Dashboard is there also, different from showing what's possible with respect to damage and flood proxy maps. So various resolutions are there with respect to that. Near real-time products are also there of varying resolutions which can be accessed and can be utilized. And this is within the context of disasters, but also otherwise. Different from looking at monitoring with respect to nighttime light in terms of changes over time and what does that speak to us and what does that say in terms of what's happening in the region. Global precipitation measurement products also exist. And of course, we can then drill down to the Caribbean region in terms of what's happening within our region, and in particular, how that would also influence our soil moisture content and how that also impacts in terms of various hazards/disasters within the region and how one would respond where that is concerned. Global landslide susceptibility is also available from NASA on the Caribbean Geoportal. And with that, of course, we can drill down to the Caribbean region to see what's happening in the region specifically. Now, Linda would have spoken to the fact that there have been a series of webinars that have been occurring by the Caribbean Geospatial Development Initiative, and 3 in particular have focused on the Caribbean Geoportal. 2 have occurred already. 1 is upcoming in September. The 2 that have occurred already, we can access the link in terms of the recordings for these on YouTube, and the links are provided here. But apart from that, specific focus or special mention will be made of the second webinar, which looked at leveraging the Caribbean Geoportal for disaster planning and management, which occurred in June. So with that, that gives you a full dive in terms of all of these resources that are available. It explores these resources with respect to focus where disaster response is concerned. And so I encourage you to go through that webinar, different from the first webinar, which really looked at the portal in general and how to utilize it, how to commence utilizing being au fait with the interface, all the various tools that are available, the data that is available, all of that. So we really encourage persons to go on YouTube and to actually access these recordings of these webinars to assist you in being sensitized and then for you to actually start utilizing. In September, of course, we'll move on to looking at our data producers in terms of metadata maintenance and best practices. So what are we saying? We are encouraging you, please access the Caribbean Geoportal. Please do explore the wide array of geospatial data that is available there, but also the wide array of geospatial tools that are available within this platform. We welcome and we support member states or the workers in the Caribbean, academia, whether you're a student researching, whether you're in the private sector, that if you are willing to so upload and contribute to this open community with respect to geospatial data. Also, we encourage the application of the various geospatial tools that are available on the platform to facilitate the analysis of the data that is there and the analysis of the data that will be provided by you, so that you can really be able to make informed decisions with respect to response to disasters. And with that, I thank you. Handing over to Artie.
Okay, good morning and everyone. Thank you, Simone, for such a detailed presentation. And so it makes my job easy. I will just run straight into the objective of this contribution on presenting to an upcoming Caribbean regional training workshops on policy and application of geospatial technologies and data in supporting the disaster risk management within the Caribbean region. So just to recap on Simone's presentation on that, in the Caribbean, it's no longer where we deal with a disaster at one time. In fact, at any one time, we are dealing with multiple disasters in various levels of severity, and of which our member countries and the region will have to respond to. For this year, based on the NOAA data, we are expecting, if I go to the high scale, estimated about 6 to 10 hurricanes, of which 3 to 5 would be classified as major hurricanes. So we are keeping our radar on those. They have been quite frequent in terms of the tropical storms, and we are hoping that it stays in a calm zone. In the months of July and June, both Suriname and Guyana have had severe flooding. Almost the entire countries of Suriname and Guyana had to deal with the very high levels of rainfall, and of course the ensuing flooding at most of the territories. And of course the recurrence of the Sargassum. And I would say that Sargassum is no longer an event, but it seemed to be part of our status quo in dealing with the impacts of the Sargassum bloom as an ongoing responsibility and planning of governments. When we look at disasters, well, we are looking at disasters, of course, in a sovereign state, in a localized setting. But we saw from the impact of the volcano of La Soufrière of St. Vincent, not only did it impact, of course, the country of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, but that if we look at the plumes, the ash plumes that was taken west and covered many of the neighboring Caribbean islands. So we saw that St. Lucia, Grenada, and of course Barbados severely affected, and where Barbados actually had emergency actions taken in place. They had to close their ports because of visibility and of course the impact of very, very high ashfall. And what also we don't we must do now is what are the impacts of the fall? If most of the ash, as we know, have fallen into the ocean space, therefore, what are the marine ecosystem impacts of the ash fall into our shared and territorial sovereign spaces? And of course, Simone mentioned the issue of that we are faced right now, which is the devastating impacts of the earthquake of Haiti. Over the weekend with SDIMA and the UN system, we've been having continued meetings. And again, it emphasized the multiple hazards and disasters happening at the same time. And today, for example, because Tropical Storm Grace is moving over this region, the search and rescue will be severely affected. And it was told, we were told by the Haitian delegation, for example, La Caisse or La Caille is actually below sea level. So if you are dealing with an incoming tropical storm or a hurricane, which is going to bring a lot of marine seawater into those regions, that's not the area you would want to have your shelters. But what are the options of shelters? And a lot of the affected persons are actually on the street because we're having the continued tremor. But also, what are the options available? And really, it's a hard time and a difficult time for the people of Haiti. So, having given that background on more emphasis on Simone's presentation on the importance of bringing disaster management data, and of course the use of geospatial technologies. On my organization, the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, together with the CRIF, we are planning this training workshop. Now, the question is why this particular focus? Now, CRIF has continually been indicating on the need for local and regional capacities in order that when they have to make decisions, they're making decisions on data-driven decision-making. And to have this, we need capacity at both, of course, the local level as well as the regional. So this year, we are working with the CRIF. We're doing a study on the assessment of the application of geospatial technologies and data. And of course, part of the study or an outcome of the study would lead into the two workshops. A workshop on policy issues where we are targeting the high-level decision makers. Because we've seen that we need all hands on deck, and we need our decision maker to be in par with our technology users in order that we can have a more systematic mechanism in supporting disaster risk management through the use of geospatial technologies and data. So workshop 1 will be held on the 30th of this month. And then workshop 2, which is the much more, it's a 9-hour session over 3 days, where our target audience would be the technology user and the persons who actually have to be working with the tools and data to create the data sets that are needed for decision making. In the preparation of the workshop, as well as the study, we felt that we needed to prepare workshops and workshops that are needed and applicable to the country needs. So in each of the applicants, we did a short assessment evaluation on key areas, and then use the data out of that to guide on the formulation of the workshop material. So these are some of the areas we ask potential candidates who will be attending the workshop to give us their knowledge level on these items. So knowledge on GIS, spatial tools, satellite remote sensing, GPS, an unmanned aerial vehicle, satellite images on processing and data design and management. So just very quick, please can you tell us where your capacities are on a scale of 1 to 5? And my last slide is that based on the results we have, and this is a week-old result because the information is coming in all the time. So out of 50 estimate 50 candidates, we just did a cluster on their responses, and For me, looking at this, it's not we are correct or wrong, but just to give us an idea of where the spread and clusters of knowledge and capacities are. My first impression when I look at it, of course, it's not uniform across the region, and that it is a quite variation. However, if I look at the response on knowledge of geographic information systems, generally the response is that they are good or very good. If I pull out of that data and I go to more specifics, for example, looking at processing of satellite imageries or unmanned aerial vehicle drone, you would see then, therefore, the capacities in those areas are not at a high level. So we see on the second graph on the lower right, you would see, for example, the processing of satellite imageries, which was from the respondents we got still in an area for development capacity-wise. Now, what is it that we are taking home from this? I feel at this stage in the planning of these workshops, and in addition to the study, the sensitization, education on the use of geospatial technology and data, still a lot has to be done. The greatest challenge we know is to get the responses from countries, and there are very many reasons, including the COVID-19, where most persons are working from home and therefore may not be as accessible. And the other one, of course, is that we must, the country level foundation, I feel it's an extremely important part in building the capacities of the application of geospatial technologies and data. And then, of course, parallel to that is to work with our regional counterparts. We know that within the Caribbean, we have, when there is a disaster, through the CDMA, it triggers the regional response mechanism. And that means that when there is a trigger for a regional response mechanism, the persons from within the member countries that are going to be part of the team of the regional response mechanism will therefore be required to have the requirements of capacity and the know-how to be part of this response mechanism that triggers at the regional level. And so I think that this type of training and capacity building is extremely important, both in serving the national requirements, but as a region, as a Caribbean, and more we are relying on our neighbors and intergovernmental bodies to help each other in such a multitude of disasters that are happening at the same time. So with that message, I stop and I say thank you for ECLAT. Thank you for having ECLAT to make this brief presentation on what we are planning for our workshop, and I pass over to the chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Simone and Artie, for these interesting presentations. Now I give the floor to Ms. Cecile Blake. She works at the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, Statistics Division, and Global Geospatial Information Management Unit. Cecile joined the United Nations Statistics Division in August 2012 and supports the work program of UNGGIM. She is also responsible for delivering Secretariat services for the United Nations Group of Experts on Geographical Names. The floor is yours, Cecile.
Thank you, Gabriela. Gabriela, how are we doing for time?
Okay.
Okay, you're seeing my screen, correct?
Yes, you need to swap in the display settings, Cecile.
I have to swap again?
Yes.
Is it better now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, wonderful. A pleasant good morning and good afternoon or good evening. I see some colleagues from Asia Pacific and Japan who is on this webinar with us. Thank you very much for coming. I have the distinct pleasure of speaking to you today about, or sharing, I should say, looking at the existing situation in regards to spatial data infrastructure development in the Caribbean, And I'll be looking at it from the perspective of the economic situation and really what we consider to be SDI. I think the jury is still out on actually what is spatial data infrastructure in terms of its development. I'll be looking at what are the real issues and the challenges that the Caribbean face, and maybe a little discussion in terms of opportunities and what we maybe see or I see as the future. And I think this will set the stage for the discussion that Valerie will moderate after I speak. Okay. First, I think that before we look at anything, right, we need to be able to follow the money. We need to know where the money is, because we know that money makes the mayor goes. Everything we do in this world is based on money and our fiscal situation. And I thought that it is important for us to look at the Caribbean in figures. Previous speakers have spoken about our small size, our vulnerability. And when I looked at our population figure, the Caribbean is really the smallest region in the world when you consider what our population size is, and of a very small surface area. And if we wish to compare, I think we only compare population-wise to Oceania, and that's where the comparison stops. So we don't compare in size, we don't compare in GDP, we're just very small in the Caribbean. And 84%, which is a very high percentage of our population, live on the coastline. Thus, our vulnerability to all these meteorological seismic events. And when we also look at our GDP performance, yes, it has been improving, but our growth rate is not as it ought to be. ECLAC says that they expect to have some amount of growth this year, but of course, you know that COVID has really caused a severe hit, not just in the Caribbean, but across the world. And I think last year it was only Guyana that grew, and it was because of their oil. I thought we should also look at individuals using the internet. And we know that because of COVID, many of our governments have had to move forward in terms of digitalizing and making their services e-ready. And so our internet usage is up. But this figure, I think, is for 2020 is maybe not quite a correct figure because it is an estimate. I think it's really significantly more. But there has been an increase, which is very good. And I'll speak a little bit more about that later. Another very important statistics that we need to look at is the region's debt. Or most countries have huge external and internal public debt, with some countries having their debt to DB ratio at 100% of GDP. That means that they have no money to spend on anything. How does that affect the uptake in terms of geospatial and what a country can do? The debt service ratio, an average across the region, stands at 29% in 2019. Okay, and in terms of disasters, the figure that I found from ECLAC is between 1970 and 2019, the region suffered from 543 disasters, which accounted for 161 billion of US dollars in damage. Consider the economy and our small GDP and income earning and what it means in terms of money that is available for national development. Okay, so I've looked at the economic situation. It is not so very nice in terms of what the economy is and what we're experiencing in the Caribbean. So we are now looking at the status of geospatial information management. This data came from a study that was done at the start of the first supporting project for the Caribbean implemented by UNGGIM, UNGGIM Americas, the University in Mexico, and the Association of Caribbean States. And you will see the average in terms of gaps per country. And this is a calculation, and you'll see the performance really of how countries were doing in terms of various variables or elements. In terms of geospatial software availability, you'll see that the data sets and the software, we scored very high. But in terms of other things like agreements, the education, the services, the policies were hitting below the 50%. And to some extent, this feeds into, this is 2014 data, and it feeds into what is currently being experienced across the region in terms of geospatial uptake and use. Another tool that has been developed over a number of years by UNGGIM Americas, I hope you're all aware about it, and the website here is accessible here. It's the Sdi Interactive Dashboard. And this dashboard allows you, based on the data provided by the countries per se, on an annual basis, we're able to see how countries perform based on indicators, and indicators in terms of interoperability, institutional arrangements, human resources, information and standards, and technology. And it's a very good idea based on the data provided, if the data is accurate, because it really contains quite a number of variables that's collated in these 4 various elements, and it tells you how countries are doing. And I think for 2020, 2021, they tried to do a comparison, because you have a baseline and how countries responded, and then we can see the variation in terms of, did you improve, did you not improve? But of course, the data is sketchy because of the level of uptake from countries. So this sheet shows you how countries are performing. What I did, which is not so good statistically, was that some countries did not give responses for various years. And so this is a combination of 2020 and 2021. So the colors indicate, so lighter green shows that you're at an initial stage of SDI development. And at green, it means you're optimized between 80 and 100%. And you can, when our information is readily available, the presentations are up, you'll be able to look, you'll be able to look at the figures and determine what is happening across the region. I can just say that 4 countries, Belize, and 4 countries, Belize and 3 other countries have optimized and operational spatial data infrastructure based on the data provided. And 7 countries have concrete or in action, so they're at the lower level of the spectrum. But of course, we have 6 countries of 17 who did not respond to the survey. So this gives you a picture in terms of what is happening. You'll find that for countries in terms of the institutional structures, like the Bahamas and the Belize, Cuba, Jamaica, and Dominican Republic, they are scoring very high. And you'll see that these countries that score very high usually are the ones being operational or optimized. So for me, I could say there's an indication that there's a correlation between institutional structures and your SDI development. But of course, that is subject to debate. Okay, based on the data that I just provided, my findings were, and I repeat, that 5 have concrete SDI operations, 2 are in action. We did not get data for 6 of 17 countries. So based on the responses, my questions are, why did 34% of these countries in the region not respond to the survey? Based on our previous presenters, a number of issues came across. COVID, maybe people are working from home, they are pressed, many multitasking, so they did not get a chance to answer the surveys. Also, what accounts for 64% of these responding countries not achieving the status of optimized or operational SDIs, because that's the status where which we want to be at. And my next question is, what are the reasons that account for 36% of the countries having optimized and operational XDIs? So these are the countries, only 36% of the countries across the Caribbean are doing well. And can we learn from what they have done to be replicated in the others? So these are the questions I put to the countries in the Caribbean for you to do a self-assessment in terms of where you want to go, what do you want to achieve. So based on my vantage point, data provided, these are 6 issues, and other presenters have spoken to some extent about them, but they are competing national priorities. And based on our GDP, debt to GDP ratio, if a country earns $1, $1 US, it pays out $3 of that, 30 cents, pardon me, of that $1 US. It has 70 cents to be allocated to health, education, crime, housing, food security. How much money is left to be spent on capital expenditure to invest in innovation and technology? Not a lot. And of course, we're also managing all these disasters. And what has happened is that many countries have gone seeking money, more money, increasing your debt. Of course, the political economy in the countries severely affect what is happening, and we see it every day based on my many years of experience in the region with changes in policy direction and political disengagement. One administration supports using geospatial, and next one comes in and they're not interested. Some say because they have vested interest in maintaining the status quo, so things remain as they are. Our small size is also said because our economies are small, our technical staff that manages our agencies are also small, and we lack the technical resources. But we have economists that say that our small size does not affect, pardon me, our performance and what we should do in terms of leveraging information to support our development. SDI policy and institutional structures, for me and my vantage point, I strongly believe that we need to have the policies and the structures in place to make the use of geospatial information within our countries what it ought to be. Of course, all our presenters so far have spoken about partnerships and collaboration. Of course, it is a must. We're too small to stand on our own. We need to work together. The possibilities are great, the institutions are great, and these challenges we must turn into our advantage. Of course, financial will always be an issue, but we should not make this be a deterrent. We just need to seek greater investments in our ICT infrastructure and to be able to secure our piece of the pie from that 70%, that 70 cents from that $1. Okay, so I believe that we should turn all our challenges into opportunities. And the first one I identify, which I'm sure you all agree, is that we have the UNGGIM. 12 years ago, we did not have this body. We now have a global body which provides the leadership and the directions and the frameworks to support implementing geospatial data infrastructure. We have the tools, we have the know-how that you need to use geospatial to support your national development. COVID-19, of course, is an enabler. Governments have become digital. We have seen increased investments. However, has the geospatial professional been able to leverage some of those investments to support your spatial data infrastructure? Have you done this? Are you aware of this? Are you able to, as we would say, jump on the bandwagon to use some of those resources that have been allocated to support the investments? Yes, we saw the generation of number of dashboards. Now we're moving into the recovery phase where we need to have our population vaccinated and we need to restart our economies. Are we leveraging information technology and the geospatial technology to support the work that needs to be done? Okay, we have lots of good practices that we can learn from across the world. And we must remember that there are other 5 regions within UNGGIM, and they are also doing wonderful work and we can learn from them. Also, of course, UNGGIM Americas and the CARIGEO project is a case in point and why we're here today. And of course, there are many other regional initiatives that we need to be aware of. And sometimes we as a region, we think too much internally and we need to look outside to see what is happening and how we can benefit from these various initiatives that are happening. We have the collaboration with the AmeriGeo, the Aguas Calientes Declaration. Are you aware of it? Did you bring this to the attention of your policymakers? These are the things that our geospatial professionals need to do. I would like to spend a little time, might be 2 minutes, Gabriela, to look at what our national mapping agencies are doing from my perspective, because we're seeing them as the enabler for SDI. And my question to you is, can they really enable our SDI development? They're traditionally mappers. They manage government lands, they do mapping, they are responsible for geodetic network. Have they been really able to bridge the gap to become modern geospatial entities and organizations? Do they still operate in silos, or do they speak to other government entities to seek their support? Do you approach our police and security or Ministry of Health to say, I can help you with the mapping of your issues? Because this is what a modern geospatial entity does. So it seeks the resources that your Ministry of Health may be getting to fight COVID, your security forces, and you get a piece of their pie to support your mapping exercise. Is this being done? So we need to think about how do we make our mapping organizations think modern, act modern, and deliver modern services. And I call it the geospatial rejuvenation of our national mapping agencies that we need to enable. We need to transform them from production organizations to national knowledge-driven shared service centers, because this is what geospatial does. It is more than mapping. It is enabling, and it is bringing various data sets together to make them available and accessible, to be used to make decisions. So what's the future? Based on the CARIGEO initiative, we sent out letters inviting Caribbean member states to support the initiative. We got 9 responses from geospatial organizations and 7 from statistical. You would have heard from Dr. Ramlal that we're focusing on statistical and mapping agencies. And what we're saying is that we're calling you upon you to join this initiative, to assist us, to enable us to support you in implementing these 6 pathways, which are of course aligned to the IGIF. We want to support you to implement, to develop your IGF implementation plans. And these are some of the things I also think that we need to discuss and to talk about. How do we make them happen? How do we strengthen your initiative to implement the IGIF, which is of course twin to those 6 elements within the CARIGEO work program? How do we support our human resources? CARIGEO has a very strong webinar program that is being leveraged, as you would have seen from the timetable, for increasing our skill sets. But what other things can be done? Of course, we need to have champions, and these need not be or mapping professionals or ministers, you need to be able to identify them, to support you, to talk on your behalf to the Minister of Finance. And of course, we need to be able to bring everybody to the table. But can our geospatial professional mapping agencies bring all these people to the table? Do we need to think about the institutional arrangements within our countries? Jamaica and the Bahamas, they have national geospatial institutions. Do we need to create geospatial institutions? And I like this adage, if you're not at the table, then you're on the menu. You'll be eaten if you do not join us. So it is important to join in on the initiative. So we call upon the global community, those of you who are here, or donor agencies or aid agencies. You need not provide money only in dollars and cents, but it can be in kind in terms of technical exchanges and secondments, and it can be within the Caribbean. We've seen where Mexico has supported and Cuba has supported Jamaica in terms of technical resources in seconding their professionals to Jamaica. Of course, this is my pet peeve. I really and truly believe we need to have the institutional backing within the region to support geospatial information management. And we can start with a Caribbean mapping agency, which will work on our common geodetic network. I see Gabriela up, my time is up. A mapping program, common standards, shared data, all the things that we need to make happen, but we need to have the institution to make it happen. I think this is my very last slide, and thank you very much. Over to Gabriela and our next speaker.
Thank you very much, Cecile, for clearly sharing the opportunities and challenges of CARIGEO. We hope to count more and more with the participation and collaboration of the Caribbean countries in this important initiative. Now I give the floor to Ms. Valerie Grant. She's the founder of Geotech Vision, a knowledge services company. She founded and built into reliable and quality provider of a range of customized services and data-driven solutions. Valerie is a lifelong learner who is passionate about technology and entrepreneurship and relishes every opportunity to mentor women, entrepreneurs, and young people. She sits on several national, regional, and international boards and committees, United Nations Global Geospatial Information Management, America's private sector. The floor is yours, Valerie.
Thanks, Gabriela. Wow, what a lively discussion. I really liked how we ended off with Cecile, lots of food for thought. And so perfect segue into the discussion. So I don't know if there were any questions from the audience, because I'd first love to jump right into that. I do certainly have a couple of questions and I'm eager to have this panel answer. I mean, lots of good information and excitement around how we can really move geospatial initiatives forward in the Caribbean. So I don't know if there are any questions. I'm not seeing any in the chat. So let me just jump into some questions that I have for the panel, as well as for persons who are able to give some further input. So we've been reminded about how providing geospatial data and tools and info where and when needed is really critical, especially in light of, I mean, we're thinking about Haiti. We know what has happened on Saturday. We know that the impending tropical storm is also going to complicate things. How important then would you say is it for us to be able to provide that geospatial data, the tools and the information where and when it is needed? I don't know who from the panel wants to take that. Or anyone from the audience want to comment on it.
Valerie, can you repeat that question, please? Sorry.
I was asking, how important is it for us to be able, as a region, to provide that geospatial data, not just the data, but the tools and the information where and when it is needed? I see Artie's hand up. I don't know if Artie wants to go ahead and answer.
Yes, Artie will answer, but I'll answer in a reverse. I think first the country must have that institutional capacity and depth in knowing what the value and purpose of this resource is. We are small countries, with small population. Our institutions are normally one person having to do many things at the same time. So a regional resource base is necessary for the effectiveness of what we have to do in supporting member countries. But the ground up is also equally important in order to get the common purpose localized and effective. So we have to take it from different prongs.
Okay.
Regional to national, and then of course the national having the absorptive capacity. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Artie. I see Simone's hand up, but Simone, I'm going to add another piece to it as you give your comment. The emergency management community and the disaster manage and the geospatial community, there's a bit of an intersection. How, while you answer the first part, how do we integrate these two communities, given the fact that we recognize that a resolution to many of those problems and challenges that we face require both communities to be working together?
Okay, thank you, Val. So to answer the first question, I think it's highly important because, as was previously stated, disasters happen and they happen fast, quick. In a lot of cases, depending on what the particular hazard is, it may happen without any warning. And so with that, being able to have access to reliable, current geospatial information that will help to drive the decision-making process is key. And if it is a case whereby there are services, there are tools, there are technologies that can aid member states in their response efforts, if these tools exist, these platforms exist, and we are not aware, they're not aware in terms of what exists, what purpose, therefore, how they can be utilized, that it makes their response effort when an event does happen stifled or hindered. And so the importance of creating awareness building in terms of what is in existence, how it can be used and all of that. And then of course, building a capacity for them to be able to use, to generate and to utilize the information different from the tools and the technologies that are available. With respect to, so yes, there is a significant overlap. So with geospatial, national geospatial entities, they come with a set of skills, knowledge and skills that help to propel in terms of the use of geospatial information and technology. Disaster related, national disaster entities have their own set of skills. And so with that, collaboration, coordination, partnership is key. Within Jamaica's context, our Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management is a key entity that looks at disasters and emergency response and drives the operation with respect to our national response to these various events. Whereas the National Spatial Data Management branch deals with coordinating geospatial related activities. So given that in terms of our mandate and how it is that geospatial information is key in driving decision-making with respect to response to disasters, we have to provide that support to ODPEM. And we also rely on ODPEM guiding us in terms of where disasters are concerned and where they sit in terms of their area of expertise, how it is that we are better informed, we're better sensitized, or capacities built or developed further in terms of how it is that in terms of understanding the context of disasters and how it is that all work in terms of geospatial information and services really help to propel and drive their work. So how it is that we provide geospatial support for them. So our collaboration is key, coordination is key, partnership is key. Without that, success, advancement cannot happen. And we see that within Jamaica's context.
All right, so we're gonna take one final, thank you, Simone, one final comment on this particular section, because I have a question in the chat that I want Linda to answer, but Cecile, I'll go to you first.
Okay, my thing is the countries need to recognize that they need help and they need to be bold to reach out to persons, countries, institutions to give help. Because I think that is also very key, because I can be sitting in my corner and I don't recognize that I need help and the help is there. So we need to have persons and leadership, the leadership that's bold and will go and say, I need this help. I think that is important. And we need to get off our fences and to speak to each other within countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Cecile. So I noticed a question. I see Linda has given a response, but I just wanted to just articulate it for everybody. Linda, the question was whether or not there has been a sub-site with satellite imagery stood up for the emergency event happening in Haiti at this point in time, if you have knowledge of that.
Yeah, I'm checking into it now, Valerie. We typically do see that with some of the providers making imagery available in times of emergency and disaster. So we'll check into that today. If we can find it available, we will certainly share it out and make it accessible through the Haiti pages.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Linda. So this leads me, as we talk about partners and collaboration, that leads me into another question. We've heard the focus on collaboration this morning quite heavily and throughout many of the things that we've done. In fact, CARIGEO itself is a collaboration. So why would you say, and this is for anybody who is on the panel, maybe Dr. Ramlal or Linda, why would you say that companies and organizations should want to partner with CARIGEO?
Linda, you want to go first?
No, go ahead.
I can go ahead. You know, the thing is, collaboration, you know, whether you're from the private sector or the public sector, you know, when you improve, you know, if you think about it for the private sector, even from a financial perspective, by collaboration, by supporting, by empowering people, by lifting people, in fact, it could lead to your empowerment as well, could lead to your profit, if you like. And therefore, you know, there is a strategic advantage in helping other people, because that way it helps you as well. But of course, that may not be, and that should not be, in my opinion, the most important factor. The most important thing is you want to help your fellow human beings. You want to help your fellow men and women across the board. And therefore, to me, it's very important to collaborate, because when you help improve people, then you have a better society, you have a more functional society, you have less people at risk. And therefore, when you improve a society, you improve their ability to cope, to function, and to take care of themselves. So that if you empower people by collaborating, then you would have helped people to help themselves. So rather than giving them a fish, you teach them how, and that to me is very important, by collaborating and providing support for people. So that is my opinion on the need for collaboration. So
thanks, Dr. Ramlal. But if there's so many things being thrown at all of us. There's so many initiatives. We have so many things. Why CARIGEO, Linda?
Yeah, I think the key point is this, right? We all don't have all the resources that we need, and we need to be able to support each other and learn from each other. And that's part of what we are doing within CARIGEO. I didn't know anything about sargassum a year ago. You guys have educated me on that, right? We're all learning within this community, and by doing so, it's helping to lift all of us up and to do better in our jobs, as Cecile was saying.
Okay, thanks. So, you know, you mentioned sargassum, and one of the things I've seen a comment in the chat, and it mentions a term that I didn't really know before this morning. I guess it's intuitive as you see the term hydrospatial, because it's clearly just quickly pointed me to marine and marine data. And so it got me to thinking about the blue economy and marine spatial data infrastructure as we look at really redefining ocean management. How are we collaborating with that community, especially in the context of what it really means for our island states? I see a couple of hands. Should Cecile, don't know if that was a comment, that was what you're commenting on.
Yes, I'm going to comment, but I'm going to change the trajectory, because part of what I said was that we need to follow the money. And when you look at the economic situation in the Caribbean, we don't have the fiscal space, right, through because of what is happening economically. Our economy says that we should grow in terms of tax revenues, reduce expenditure, consolidate in terms of income taxes. We need to update, increase our royalties on non-renewable resources, things like bauxite and oil. And we must put taxes on the digital and the environmental economy. And we must make investments in climate and connectivity. And we must, in order to safeguard the economy. So I am saying that we need to be leveraging our geospatial work in these areas. Follow the money. The money is, how do we support our governments in collecting more taxes? How do we tell them how to go about taxing renewable resources? How do we go about implementing taxes? It might sound harsh in terms of the digital and in the environment economy. But of course, there's also the balance in terms of how do you balance answering Valerie's question in terms of the money that we need to grow and the environment that we need to manage. And of course, our climate investments and our IT investments. I'm sorry if I really did not answer, but I think we need, as geospatial professionals, we need to learn to follow the money. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Artie, you wanted to comment on the matter of the blue
Thank you,
economy.
thank you. Cecile always set the stage. I want to, we're at ECLAC, we're currently doing a study on integrated water resources management policies for the Caribbean. And I start from there because I also learned a new word, hydrospatial, this morning. And I think for small island development states, we cannot differentiate the land, the territories, and water systems from our coastal and marine. They are sometimes just, the interface is so very short. And we know under the Cartagena Convention, the negotiations are, if we are looking at our marine space as island, the greatest amount of pollution that enters our marine space come from our land space. And of course, the impacts we know. For example, the blooms of sargassum are coming out of land sources of pollution. I also want to talk about, you know, the whole big push of the blue economy. And I come from a natural science background and having to speak in economic terms. And it's my biggest challenge that we say follow the money, but we also must also be able, as technologists, speak the language, convince the economists that green is not a label, but green is a whole institutional system that has to happen using technologies, capacities, the need for data, for us to hold a label and say, this is green, this is blue, this is pink, or this is orange as the creative industry. And I find often the decision makers are so into their silos that we don't speak a language of commonality that gives to the next level. We are constantly in our silos. And I think that bridge is important at the decision-making level and of course, naturally at our operational level.
Right.
So this has been my take. Thank you.
Thanks, Artie. I'm gonna hand over to Dennis as he comments on that.
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity to say a few words and for the fact that the word hydrospatial seems to have grabbed some interest. I've been a strong advocate of hydrospatial in the last year or so. And, you know, hydrospatial is all about the blue of our blue planet. It is about, the coastal zone. It is about the blue aspect. It is about the blue economy. And as many of you know, there's a lot that is coming up in the decade that we've just started with the United Nations Ocean Science on Sustainable Development Decade. There is also the Seabed 2030. And I can see that especially those of you who have more interest in the CARIGEO, that this hydrospatial is embedded into the geospatial. You mean the both when you're talking about geospatial, but I think it's very important to distinguish the two because often when geospatial is used, it is more for the land side that we're using example and management in terms of, the cadastre and all the property rights and things like that, which is extremely important. But for the area that you are interested in, hydrospatial is as much, if not more important in the context of the growing blue economy and the sustainable development. So I will post on the chat a link to know a little bit more about hydrospatial. It's not something new. It's about the blue of the blue planet, and it is about the geospatial, the blue geospatial. But I think there's so much unknown in the blue area that it deserves its own naming as hydrospatial. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. All right, so switching gears a little bit, as we look at this whole matter of sharing geospatial data and having access to it, and we've spoken about what is being done with CARIGEO. I've seen some comments about the whole matter of standards. So I guess my question is, it's important for us to discover which geospatial data is available and how to evaluate the fitness for purpose. How can we do that in the context of the Caribbean right now? Are there mechanisms for us to do so?
I would say start with the Caribbean Geoportal. We are trying to curate so much content there. And for those of you who haven't yet shared data, share your data, make it accessible to others in the community.
Okay, thanks, Linda. So back to Cecile's point, Cecile really made some good questions that needed to be answered in her presentation. In order to get our countries or regions or organizations and everybody excited, clearly, as was mentioned, following the money is critical. How do we have, what should we be doing? Should we be having case studies? Should we be showing the financial impact? What is it that, do we need economic impact of geospatial assessment for the Caribbean region done? What is needed? What are your recommendations for us to get to that point where persons can recognize that this is as important as something else that they will spend their money on, or even more important, because it will allow them to see down the road that this infrastructure, having the information, is so critical? What do we need to do?
Yeah, I think you're asking a very hard question, Valerie.
I had made some points there in terms of it actually has to do with leadership and advocacy. And the question I ask all the time is, do our land surveyors or those persons who are in charge of our national mapping agencies, do they have the skill sets to be advocates and ambassadors? Is Bishem teaching them how to be advocates in his MSc and BSc programs? Or are they only technicians? Do they teach them how to communicate at the level, at the non-technical level? Do you teach them how to network? The soft skills that are needed to get into the boardrooms, to make that value proposition that is needed with our policymakers and our CEOs and our ministers? Or do they stay in the bushes and use their theodolites and their total stations to measure? Are we equipping or future mapping professionals to be actually business oriented? Because that's what you need, and the leadership to make this happen. That's what I really think. To be able to speak simple language to communicate what is necessary.
All right, so I'm hearing the common thread being that we need to look at our messaging. We really need to look at our messaging, and we need to prepare the persons to convey the right messaging. And I see Dr. Ramlal camera on and mic open, so I take it that you have another comment on that matter.
Yeah, well, I agree with Cecile that, at one point, perhaps we were focusing, quite a bit on the technical, but I think that has changed significantly over the last few years. you can ask Simone and Michelle, who are both on this particular meeting, about being graduates of the geomatics engineering programs at UE. And I think Simone would tell you, you know, she graduated with her master's in geoinformatics. And at that level, we are in fact focusing quite a bit on making sure that there's an appreciation of the softer skills and being able to communicate and being able to sell the message or to effectively communicate the value of the geospatial you know, components of information. So yes, I think we are moving towards that more and more in selling the message. And there are, you know, several people who are university graduates, people from Dwight Francis from St. Kitts and Nevis. We have the Director of Surveys from Trinidad and Tobago, Director of Surveys in Barbados. And they would tell you, I think, that they would have benefited significantly from some of the efforts. Of course, there's always improvements. There are always things we can do differently and do more of in terms of improving that. But yeah, so Cecilia, point is taken, but we are definitely trying to make that happen more so now than ever before.
All right, thanks. I'm seeing some great comments in the chat, so please look at the chat in terms of things to do with standards, in terms of both the ISO standard, having a review and how persons can participate in that, looking out for a pilot study that is being done by the OGC, which is looking at questions of how to address marine standards. So these are just some of the things that I want persons to make note of. I'm going to take a final comment, and I'm sure I'm going to butcher this person's name, so I'm sorry for that. I apologize beforehand. Balaji, you had a comment, please.
Thank you very much. I want to say big congratulations to the region with regards to the CARIGEO, and also to Esri for the support that they have been giving the countries in the region. My question or comment is, I will admonish or encourage member states in the region to try and advocate for the high-level nomination of, for example, I will name the country now. The country they operate a prime ministerial kind of parliament. And the minister for the lands and survey happens to be somebody who is a spatial scientist. So my admonition is, if it's possible, to encourage governments to nominate people who are experts in the industry to actually lead the geospatial industry in the various countries. It goes a long way in you know, rubber stamping and ensuring that stakeholders in the industry embrace this technology, and also statistics offices will also be encouraged to see that there's collaborations between the surveyors, the GIS experts, the cartographers, as the case may be. So in short, if we can advocate for high-level representation of industry leaders at political level, then it will go a long way in championing our cause. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. I think we've come to the end of our open discussion, but I want to say one of the things that I'm seeing really coming out is the 3 C's: communication, collaboration, and community. I think it's really important that we recognize that it takes a community to really do this. We need to collaborate, and the value of effective communication. So with that, I really thank you, and I'll hand back to Gabriela. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Valerie. Finally, for our closing remarks, I give the floor to Mr. Álvaro Monet, Regional Advisor on Geospatial Information Management in the Statistics Division of ECLAC. The floor is yours, Álvaro.
Thank you very much, Gabriela. And I would like to thank all of you, dear colleagues, for participating in this valuable exchange on the initiative for the geospatial development in the Caribbean, CARIGEO. And special thanks to all the speakers, our dear presenters, Paloma, for your stimulating welcome message and providing the big picture on the strategic objectives of CARIGEO, dear Beshem, for giving us an overview on the CARIGEO program, dear Linda, for sharing valuable information about CARIGEO ongoing activities, dear Simona Narti, for highlighting the relevance today more than ever of geospatial information to support disaster management. Dear Cecil, for reviewing and sharing the overview on the current situation of the National Geospatial Information Management in the Caribbean region, and also for highlight and reflect about the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead to address this, as you said, the geospatial rejuvenation. And finally, thank you very much, dear Valerie, for facilitating the exchange on these very relevant topics that we all addressed during this last part of the meeting. So I would like to take this opportunity to send heartfelt condolence to our friends in Haiti who have been affected by this devastating earthquake. This experience shows us once again the importance of the information about the territory, and as our colleagues pointed out in their presentation, the value of information technology and geospatial information for disaster risk management. From CARIGEO, we are very aware that this is a first regional priority, and we will continue focusing our efforts in this direction. Finally, I would like to reinforce the call for engagement and contribution of the Caribbean member states and territories in this important initiative, and also to all those partners who can contribute with their knowledge and information to enhance the geospatial capabilities of the region. We need all of you there, colleagues. And finally, you were mostly welcome at the coming webinar of UNGGIM that we will be holding in August 33rd. So you will receive the information on this. So again, thank you all very much and have all a great day, dear colleagues.
Thank you, everybody, to join to this side event. And thank you. Bye-bye.